we were thinking it might be helpful to record a little video about how and what we're processing with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, just from our lens to help support you all in your processing of it. Right off the bat, we want to mention that in addition to, we'll be bringing this into worship a little bit. We'll have a prayer station and it'll be mentioned. But if you're looking for a more significant time to kind of out loud process some of your thoughts, obviously Barry and I are available. You can reach out to us, and we are going to have a time to do that, kind of a reflection roundtable, a time to do that together as community on March 10th, which is next Thursday, at 7 p.m. at Chapel Hill. You're more than welcome to come to that.
Yeah, we would love that, because as Jess and I have been talking about this, Jess is a little bit more of an out loud processor than I am, a little bit. But it does help to talk about it, to put language to the particulars of this moment, but also to talk about who we are as faithful people and what our faith tradition calls us to. Jesus calls us to be peacemakers. Sometimes that's really confusing about what that looks like in tangible terms. And we're feeling like talking about some of the alternatives to being engaged in the war effort itself, and what kinds of options does the nation have, and what kind of options do we as people of faith have in giving some feedback to our leaders.
So we'd invite you to come be a part of that, or have conversations with us, and we'll share a little bit about our thinking now, in the hopes that it might help some other folks process. So Barry, what are some things, where are you at? What are you processing right now? What are you thinking about? Just to preface, this is Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday, March 1st.
This is Tuesday, March 1st, and this is one of those times where we're very busy in the life of the church, getting ready for Lent and Ash Wednesday and all that stuff. And I'm mindful that tomorrow, today we ate punchkis. Tomorrow we will put ashes on foreheads and remind each other that we are mortals. And I'm reminded that that war is a manifestation of our mortality and the limited ways in which we think about things. So where I am right now is I'm watching the same newsreels you are, and the tragedies of human life in Ukraine. And yeah, my prayers are about them at this point. And I really haven't gone the next step to what I really think we ought to be doing. Clearly, every step we take is going to have consequences beyond Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, I think that's putting it in the context with Ash Wednesday and this thought about mortality is stark. Yeah. And just a reminder of how necessary this moment is. Sometimes with we like to hang out at Christmas and Easter, and we forget about Ash Wednesday, and we forget about the Passion. Something I'm thinking about and processing. I've said this to you before, and I'll say this to others. I have a lot of conflicting thoughts and feelings about this. There's one where I'm not sure how to engage with this news content responsibly. I don't want to be a consumer of someone else's war, and I want to be up to date. Like, I want to be knowledgeable. I want to be kind of plugged in when I can. So that's just kind of an interesting tension of being like, oh, like we're so connected, I don't want to be a consumer of war. I don't want to seek this out or watch it like it's a TV show, or kind of, go to it because it gives me a hit of adrenaline for my own anxiety. So I'm trying to be thoughtful about that. I also have conflicted feelings about being so moved by Ukrainian leadership and Ukrainian people. And feeling kind of this, upswelling of pride, and that I'm proud of them for figuring out how to defend themselves. I'm, in my heart, kind of cheering for them, and understanding that there's a global community doing that as well. And yeah, listening to, President Zelensky say like, hey, I'm here, I'm not going away. Like we're here. And on the flip side, not being so kind of caught up in that upswell of those moments of support or pride that we forget, like, oh, their lives are at stake. There are Russian soldiers who are fighting in a war they might not even have all the information about, who maybe don't even want to be there. I mean, it's kind of this interesting feeling of like, oh, it's gross. And yet I feel um, weirdly grateful for these examples of leadership in these really tough times.
Yeah, as I think about it, I'm watching the pictures and hearing the stories. I so want to reach out and do something to be engaged, to be helpful. And I know that the church is once again going to be in a primary position of picking up the pieces. I know that we're going to do refugee resettlement. I know that we're going to send money. I know that we're going to be involved in United Methodist Committee on Relief, whatever the channels are, we're going to be doing that. And so often the faith has to do with helping people rebuild. And so my heart's been there as well, and knowing that some of our organizing as pastors is going to be on that side of war. And that's frustrating. At the same time, it's comforting because it's something we know how to do, because I don't know how to stop the war.
Yeah, I think a lot of us feel that tension of like, hey, what can I do? Like, what can I do? And knowing that there's really very little. So we're trying to figure out what are ethical and appropriate outlets for what that looks like. It's hard. And I think you're right. Like we'll talk about, I'm sure Encore and other places where, we feel good about sending our money because we know how it's used, and eventually refugee resettlement and all of those particular ways. But to have our heartstrings pulled in such an intense way and to not be able to do something in this moment is a really hard place to be and contemplate. And I know there are others who are feeling that too.
Yeah, I just hope that we get some folks to have a conversation with us, because, Jess and I sort of just get tired of talking to ourselves. so come on out and let's have the conversation. Yeah, it's a tender time, and it's good for us to be together and pray together and talk together.
I'm curious too. So we talked a little bit about what we're processing. I'm curious, Barry, how do you process this kind of information? What does that look like for you? Just in case there's someone out there who's like struggling or thinking through, okay, what do I do with all this?
Yeah, I'm with you. I try hard not to overload on news. And when I do, I try to get a variety of sources and get as close to primary sources as I can. That helps me. I've also been doing some intentional meditative time, mindfulness, and it helps me to simply spend time in mindfulness, and that this is not mine to fix.
Yep, I'm similarly checking my sources. It's interesting because I know you're not a TikTok user, because I know I send some to you sometimes. But like, so there'll be times on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or whatever where something just kind of comes up and it catches your attention, but you don't really go seeking it. So I really try to be thoughtful about not being there all the time, not being in those spaces where just anything can come at me based on an algorithm, because that can get pretty overwhelming. So I want to be intentional about how I'm consuming this kind of news, especially since there's so much information. As you mentioned, I'm a verbal processor, so I need to talk it out. So I need to just check in with people. I need to hear where other people's input is and kind of think and ruminate on that. I also think I personally think public support of figuring out what this looks like is really important. I think global citizenry is an important step, and that's made, I think, a difference so far in what's actually happened. So I think in that sense, it's a small way where people can make a difference. And I don't know if you're like, hey, this is where I go in the Bible when I'm feeling this way. But I get into, unsurprisingly, the Psalms, and Psalm 137 is a place where in these kind of times of mourning what was, I think because there's a song attached to it too, so my brain can go to the song. But by the waters of Babylon, we sat and we wept, and we remembered Zion, and that can get me into a place where I can feel my feelings instead of thinking all my thinkings about it. That helps me.
Yeah, me too. And Psalms are good ways to do that. The other thing is that we've been preparing for Lent, and we've been doing this book called Good Enough, and I have found some of the pieces there of good enough spirituality to be helpful in this time. The other thing that's been helpful to me is to do the continual self-reminder that this is a unique time. I don't have to tie it to any piece of history and say this is just like, because it's not just like. This
Yeah.
is unique. This is a unique moment in history, and while we do indeed learn from history, or we're doomed to repeat it, right? We cannot do this parallel thing. This is just like. It's not just like. This is a unique experience, and so far, the response of the nations has been pretty unique too,
Yeah.
and thoughtful. So, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do to kind of take care of my own being in the midst of it, knowing full well that I am not under attack.
Yep. Well, friends, that's where we're at. Things will likely be vastly different, or maybe not when we meet again on Thursday. But we wanted to check in with you all. Just we're thinking and praying for you. A lot of your prayer requests were specifically about Ukraine, so we figured we would maybe take a little time this afternoon to talk a little bit about it and invite you into further reflection in the coming days.
Yeah, we want you to know our hearts, because as pastors, some people are going to applaud what we do, and some people are going to be frustrated by what we do at any given time. But we're clear. We're not going to be preaching a stance on the conflict. We're not going to preach a stance on the war. But we are going to be talking about how do we make a difference, and how do we keep ourselves spiritually healthy in the midst of the dilemma of how to be peacemakers in such a far off, something that feels so far off, and yet feels like neighbors. And I have some ideas about why it feels that way we can talk about.
Really, we just wanted to invite you into reflection and further conversation. So we hope you'll join us on the 10th. If you need to reach out before, please do so. And we'll be seeing you.
Great. Thanks, everybody.